This is one of my favorite photos that we have taken at UMDF. This is a picture of the desk in my office after one of my management meetings. And as you can see from this photo, no one has time to push in their chair. We aim to go fast. We aim to go fast because our patient families are counting on us to do so. There's just too much to be done. And one such member of our team who doesn't push in his chair is Dr. Phil Yeske. As our Science and Alliance Officer, he strives to go fast, but he also strives to go far. You know, there's an age-old African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Here to share with you the impact of our collaborative efforts and a little bit more about our scientific portfolio and our impact there is Dr. Phil Yeske. Phil?
Thanks so much, Brian. Really great words to kick us off today. And, I want to continue in that theme. This whole symposium, we've been paying homage to 25 years of great mission delivery by UMDF, and rightfully so. Many great accomplishments. Today, in my update, I'd like to emphasize some of the things that we're going to try to do a little bit differently going forward to really demonstrate to this community how committed UMDF is to continue to delivering mission that is valuable to our patient community. So with that in mind, let me start with our sort of first big initiative, and that's patient registry. UMDF has been involved in patient registry since 2014. We ran the mitochondrial disease community registry from 2014 to 2020. And in 2020, I published a paper together with a volunteer data analyst to UMDF that really captured what we learned from those 5-6 years of registry data collection. And there were a lot of important findings about what's important to our patient community, how they feel about the way they're treated when they're receiving clinical care, what their hopes and goals are. And we took all of that very seriously, and when we wanted to move forward now with what else could we learn from it. So we know we had over 2,000 users on that platform. We have an engaged community. We knew that the patients, it's very important to them that they hear back about when we share our data, when we participate in registries, what's going on with that. So that's a learning for sure, that we have to be willing to share back to the community. And the other clear message was, it's not easy living with mitochondrial disease or taking care of a loved one with mitochondrial disease. And so we have to prioritize inside the registry what we're asking our participants to do. So with that in mind, we really started thinking about best practices for patient registry of how we can do it better now in this 25th year and beyond. The first key thing was, how can we help our patients navigate clinical care? That was a very clear message. How can we help them there? And so integrating clinician activities with patient activities, this was a message we heard through MDCR, that we need better communication between patients and their clinicians. So this concept of co-production of care really came to the forefront, that it's working together. It's bringing all the stakeholders together to co-produce an optimal healthcare situation. We also heard a registry needs to help us in our daily life as well. So how can we make patient caregiver lives easier? So patient support tools are an important component of best practice registries now in the year 2021 and going forward. There's many ways to do that. We can help with document management. We can help with tracking of symptoms and activities, journaling capabilities, many different ways that we can do that. But that's going to be central to any registry that considers itself a gold standard. And lastly, and certainly not least, we want to be able to use a patient registry to advance research. How can we advance the understanding of mitochondrial disease? And of course, now we're referring to the ability to present surveys, open studies, natural history studies, to have proper oversight, to have proper data utilization policies in place, to have the tools necessary to analyze the data to be able to share back to the patient community. So as we were thinking about what we wanted to have as a UMDF patient registry now and into the future, these were the best practices that we were constantly aware of. So today, I'm really happy to share with you that we're launching a new patient registry called MitoShare, and that we're partnering with a company called Across Healthcare. The CEO, founder of Across Healthcare, Jason Colquitt, is a very experienced healthcare IT professional. He's also a member of our community and has a mitochondrial disease. I feel very fortunate that I've been cultivating a relationship with Jason for a number of years, and that when we decided to move from the platform we had been using for mitochondrial disease community registry, that we had a partner like Jason, like Across Healthcare, ready to go to help us build a world-class registry going forward. So the Across Healthcare product is called the Matrix platform. And as you can see on this slide, it's a shared platform to help care for and cure rare diseases. So immediately, you begin to hear some of the language I was using around best practices on the previous slides. And co-production of healthcare is central to the Matrix platform. This means that all of the stakeholders, whether you're a patient, a caregiver, a clinician, researchers, we all need to work interdependently to co-create and co-deliver care. And that's how Matrix is structured. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more about some of the benefits associated with that. To our patient community, first and foremost, when you sign up, you have access to a registry that will have the support tools discussed, that will allow you to track your medications, your symptoms, your activities, your doctor appointments. You'll be able to capture your own thoughts and journaling. You'll be able to see how others are doing these things and have peer-to-peer interactions. So this is, I think, a great start for any registry platform. We want to make your life easier and deliver you the tools that you need to do that. For caregivers, oftentimes, that's many of the same things I just described in terms of being able to track medications for your loved ones, but being able to generate reports that you can then take to your clinicians to be able to understand how your mitochondrial disease journey changes over time. For clinicians, Matrix is built with clinician integration in mind, and this is really important going forward. We know we need to bring the clinicians and the patient population closer together. So the ability for a patient to identify a clinician on platform, invite them there, and be able to share their data with them is a great start. We have lots of ideas about how we can expand upon that, but as a starting point, it's bringing clinicians and patients closer together so that the optimal healthcare can be delivered. Let's not forget about the research community. And by research community, I'm including both academic and industry researchers. We're going to collect data in a way that will ensure high fidelity data that will enable you to generate the most important research questions and get answer to them from patient-derived data. All of this will be done in a privacy compliant way, in a way that's consistent with regulatory filings. These are going to be really important components of what the registry is doing. For our patient base, we want you to come and join the registry because you see many different value propositions associated with it. But when you engage in research, you are helping to fulfill our mission of developing treatments and cures for mitochondrial disease. So let's talk about where we are with the registry with MitoShare right now. First and foremost, from a governance and oversight perspective, we've already put in place an initial scientific and patient advisory committee. I've recruited some members to that. And we're advancing the institutional review board, the IRB review of both the protocol for the registry as well as the informed consent form. I know for many of you that might sound like some mumbo jumbo, but these are really important first steps. This is the foundation of the registry and demonstrating to you that we intend to operate this in a professional and ethical manner and maintain good oversight of your data so that you can trust that we're going to put it to the best use possible. Some of the features that will be available immediate at launch, I've talked about the support tools already, some of the symptom tracking, activity tracking, medication tracking. We'll also have a couple of brief surveys because we want to prioritize your time around additional demographic information and diagnostic status. Diagnostic status is really important because we need to understand for each person coming into the registry, Are you already a patient that has a confirmed genetic diagnosis of mitochondrial disease, or are you still on the diagnostic journey? Both of those groups are very important to us. I cannot emphasize that enough. You do not have to have a mitochondrial disease diagnosis, and particularly a genetic diagnosis, to join the registry. We want to be able to provide content to all the members of our community, no matter where you are on your diagnostic journey. Immediately, you'll be able to connect to your electronic health records at your healthcare institutions, bring those into the registry, have the data structured in a way that we can begin to use those data to advance research efforts, and also for you to have a place to be able to summarize and see what's inside of your electronic health records. I've already mentioned the ability to invite healthcare professional, a clinician to the platform to view health data. And very importantly, we'll be providing a mechanism for those who have had genetic testing and have a copy of their lab testing report to upload that report and then have the report curated by a healthcare professional, in this case, a genetic counselor. This is important for a number of reasons. Those reports are written for clinicians first and foremost. Patients absolutely have a right to receive a copy of that report. But oftentimes, if we asked you, get out your report, tell us what the pathogenic gene is, or which variant was identified, or what was the heteroplasmy level, this can be very confusing. So we want to take that confusion out, have you upload the report, and know that in a properly stewarded, curated way, we'll extract the data. For our research friends, this should lead to a very high fidelity data set so that we know exactly who has what kind of mitochondrial disease inside of MitoShare. MitoShare is really built to grow, though. This is only the beginning, and that includes the government and oversight component. For sure, we'll have additional domains of expertise that we want to add to our advisory council. We're going to want to harmonize the activities of UMDF with MitoShare with other groups that are running patient registries. We live in a world now where there will be multiple registries. We hope that we're creating something that can serve as a central repository, ultimately be able to bring other data sets together to a single platform. That's going to require collaboration, and that is front of mind as we design MitoShare. In terms of other features for the users of MitoShare, as I mentioned, we want to be able to run natural history studies, perhaps on specific forms of mitochondrial disease, like Lee syndrome as an example. We, of course, want to be able to collect data from patients, often referred to as patient-reported outcome measures, or PROMs. These are the foundation for natural history studies, but also for designing clinical trials going forward and meaningful endpoints. Other features we have in mind for MitoShare: being able to track your biosamples. Many of you may have provided a biosample, a blood draw, a blood sample, or some other type of tissue sample as part of your mitochondrial disease healthcare. Being able to bring that all together so that we know who has what where allows us then to turn around and be able to respond to queries whenever there are opportunities for those biosamples to be put to work. And of course, genetic data or raw genomic data that results from genetic testing, very important from a diagnosis point of view, but also from a research point of view in terms of understanding the diversity and complexity of mitochondrial disease. In terms of initiatives, in the near term, we really want to focus on closer integration of the clinicians with the platform. Make no mistake, this is a patient-populated registry, and it will primarily be focused on patient-populated data. But we know there are opportunities to bring clinician-derived data together with patient-populated data. And a classic case of 1 + 1 isn't just 2, but it's 3 or more. So we're looking for ways to do that on platform, and Matrix enables us to do that. Later today, I'll be telling you about some exciting new programming from UMDF around supported genetic testing programs. We feel like the patient registry is the ideal place to begin that process so that we can recruit you, understand who you are, what your situation is, check eligibility, and then begin the process of perhaps providing no-cost genetic testing to those of you in the community that have been unable to have genetic testing by some other means. So many more details to follow on that, but a really exciting development for our community. And also later today, you'll hear about other research projects like MCDR, which is a genomic data project, and Treat Mito, which is really about bringing many different data sets together to try and facilitate clinical trials for mitochondrial disease. All of these projects will be appropriately integrated with MitoShare so that we're using the data that you share to the extent that you're comfortable sharing that data and give approval to advance our mission of developing treatments and cures for mitochondrial disease. It's really an exciting time for the community. So I have a very simple call to action today. We're not quite ready to open the registry and have you create accounts, but we are ready to share with you the link of mitoshare.org to this web address where you can go to learn more about MitoShare and some of our goals for it. And very importantly, you can also join a waiting list that you see here. Very simply share your email address with us and we'll keep you updated as we get closer to launch so that you can jump in and be a part of this community. If you're not comfortable doing that, that's fine. We understand. Just keep an eye on social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. We'll be shouting from the mountaintops when this is ready to open. And we hope that's just a matter of a few weeks so that you'll know when the registry is open and you can come check it out for yourself and see if this is something that you want to be a part of. I'm going to pivot now to, I talked about patient-centered research as an important part of the registry activities. But of course, UMDF is already engaged in patient-centered research in many different ways. And I'd like to provide an update now on the Lee Syndrome Roadmap Project. We called it the Roadmap Project because our goal was really to follow the UMDF roadmap of improving the diagnosis of the disease, developing treatments and cures for the disease, and optimizing clinical care. And in this case, it's in the very relatively narrow definition of Lee syndrome. We know so many in our community living with this disease and taking care of loved ones with it. So in 2018, we began a collaboration with 5 groups in total to form the Lee Syndrome International Consortium. It was the recognition that by partnering and bringing together these leading patient advocacy organizations, and that these organizations putting their financial might behind it, we could create something to help us advance this roadmap. So you see some of the guiding principles I've listed there around this will be patient-centered research. We definitely need scientific input, but primarily it's going to be what can we learn from the patients. Collaboration is at the center of it. Just by the organizations you see listed above from around the world, you get some sense, but it extends to the academic community and industry as well. And truly, it is meant to be inclusive. We really want to try to bring together the right people at the right time to advance our goals. And so there were some high-level priorities established relatively quickly around we need to know what the preclinical models are from a research point of view. Again, who has what where that we can learn from to advance the development of treatments and cures. We need better outcome measures, how to assess the progression of Lee syndrome over time clinically and from a patient perspective. But really, it was natural history data and sharing that we identified as sort of the top priority, that to really understand Lee syndrome and to have more clinical trials and ultimately have those therapeutics to treat patients with Lee syndrome, we need more natural history data. And perhaps we were a bit naive about that undertaking, to be honest, in 2018. It's a big job to assess how do you do that well. And it certainly didn't help when a pandemic arrived in the year 2020 as well. But I'm really excited to share with you that we're very close to launching a Lee syndrome-focused multi-year natural history study. In the first phase, we're targeting recruitment of at least 100 patients. We want to use both clinician-derived and patient-derived, or in this case, caregiver-derived data as part of the natural history studies. And I've shown on the right side of the screen some of the core measures that will ask all the sites that are involved in this natural history study to collect. And this is not meant to be limiting in any way. This is the core, if you will. Many sites will collect many other measures as well, and we hope to be able to aggregate those as well. A natural history study is only successful if you're collecting data frequently and over time. It's a longitudinal study. And so we envision 2 to 4 clinic visits per year to collect the clinical data. And on the home front, we'll collect some of the some of the measures you see listed here even more frequently as your time allows. What's really important is this is meant to be a worldwide initiative. Nothing about mitochondrial disease is exclusive to a particular region or country. That we have to look for patients everywhere in the world to be able to generate what's called the power of the data to find the patients to be able to inform our goals going forward. So initially, we've identified 8 sites you see listed here to partner with us on this natural history study, but we know there are large pockets of mitochondrial disease patients with Lee syndrome in other sites in other locations, and we look forward to partnering with them as well in the future as we begin to develop this. And ultimately, it's about being able to bring together the data we collect, whether it's clinician-derived or patient-derived, caregiver-derived, in an aggregated way, in a de-identified way to respect your privacy, to be able to drive those research inquiries. And so we're really excited that we're partnering with the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia to serve as our data management center to help us collect those data, bring it together, aggregate it, so we can begin to look for trends in the progression of mitochondrial disease, for Lee syndrome in particular, again, to improve upon the natural history study, improve upon the types of therapeutics that are being developed. It's a really important project, and I'm very excited that we're right at the precipice of being able to launch this later this summer as the pandemic eases. So lastly, I just want to talk about some of the other activities of Lee syndrome group, and that's around grants. So natural history study, very important. Back in 2019, we opened up a grant cycle and actually made over $200,000 worth of awards to the researchers you see listed on your screen. Much like clinicians, much like the rest of us, their research has been delayed by the pandemic, but they're making good progress. We're staying in close contact with them. And these are all Lee syndrome focused projects that we really look forward to hearing outcomes and readouts from later this year or early into 2022. But we know there's more work to do. So our group, our leadership group, the patient advocacy groups that you saw listed on the first slide, have committed to having an additional grant cycle later this year. We don't have the details worked out on exactly how much it will be or what the specific topics will be, but it will be Lee syndrome focused, and we will be driving even more research towards understanding and curing Lee syndrome in the very near future. Of course, grants are central to that 25-year history of UMDF. And for many people, it's the first thing they think about when they're thinking about the UMDF. So I'd like to just talk about some of our activities in the past year where we focused on family impact funds first. And family impact funds, if you're not aware, are really a partnership between UMDF and families. We steward the donor dollars, but we work with the families to understand their goals. For us, this is an opportunity to address a more targeted form of mitochondrial disease, more focused research topics. And importantly, as we look to the next 25 years of UMDF, this is a place where we can test new approaches and novel collaborations to drive research in even new and different directions. If you'd like to find out more about family impact funds, I've put the link on your screen here. Please go to our website and check it out if you think you might be interested in opening one. So 2 funds in the past year we've focused on. One is the Kevin McGovern Family Impact Fund with a focus on Cairns-Sayre syndrome and CPEO. There, we ran a grant cycle targeted on KSS and CPEO, and ultimately selected David Sabatini, a researcher at Whitehead Institute, part of MIT, to advance a project for high-throughput screening that could lead to therapeutic development for Cairns-Sayre syndrome. It's really exciting. And we're thrilled with the collaboration we had with the McGovern family to bring that together. We've also progressed a project together with the Connor family, and Kendall Connor in particular, affected by Lee syndrome, and a very specific mutation. So this project is an opportunity to look at so-called N of 1 research projects, where we're really going to focus in on this specific mutation and how it affects Kendall Connor. Here, we partnered with a very large contract research organization called Charles River Laboratories to advance a project where we begin with Kendall cells. We look for ways to develop assays to measure how well they work. And then we begin to look for ways to rescue those cells to improve the way they perform. Ultimately, we hope that a drug that's already approved may be able to be repurposed and serve as a first-line therapeutic for someone like Kendall. It's an exciting project that for sure going forward we'll have even more of inside the UMDF community. So I'm just going to end with the Accelerators Prize, because this really represents UMDF trying to be nimble and change as we're looking to the next 25 years. And Brian's already talked about this program, and I think each of us describes it slightly differently. To me, it's a merging of scientific peer review with donor engagement. That is to say, we'll never take our eye off the importance of ensuring that anything we're funding with donor dollars is scientifically sound and a fundable project. But we like the idea of allowing our donors to have a say in which projects really connect with them and that they want to advance. And that's really the central theme behind the Accelerators program. So this year, we're awarding a $50,000 prize to a postdoctoral fellow. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the big pitch session where we'll hear from the 3 finalists for the Accelerators Prize this year, and later in the day, find out who won. So thank you for your attention. I look forward to talking with you again soon.